You know, the most important thing is that you come into an organization with a clear vision. And being able to sell that vision to your troops is extremely important.
Welcome to the Southside Show, your local news and information source for Atlanta's South Side.
Welcome to the Southside Show. I'm your host, R.D. Jones III. The Southside Show will introduce you to talented individuals, visionary leaders, innovative entrepreneurs, and game changers that make a Southside strong. Today's guest is Chief Keith Meadows. He's the first Chief of Police for the City of South Fulton. He is a successful command-level executive with over 35 years of law enforcement experience. This highly accomplished visionary law enforcement executive is a strong supporter of 21st century policing principles and champions the guardian mindset as it relates to public safety. Welcome, Keith Meadows.
Thank you so much for having me here today.
All right.
Yes.
I'm happy to have you here today. We've talked many times in the past.
Right.
We have worked together at the City of College Park.
Right.
You left, joined the City of South Fulton, was there for a couple years. You kind of got them all warmed up and everything, and then I came along and I followed you as Economic Development Director.
That's right.
But I would like to start off first with you providing us with kind of your background, where you grew up and everything,
Okay.
and we'll take it from there.
So I actually grew up here in the city of Atlanta, in the Atlanta metropolitan area. I'm a product of the Atlanta public school systems. I went to Warranty Jackson Elementary School, I went to Sutton Middle School, and I graduated from Northside High School.
Okay.
I later went on to Georgia State University, and from there I got into policing. I always wanted to go and investigate murders, and I had the opportunity to do that at a really high level in my time with the Atlanta Police Department. I was over the homicide unit there for 11 of my 30 years. And after retiring from Atlanta, I left and went to become the Chief of Police in College Park for 3 years, and the City of South Fulton kind of wooed me away. I think the thought of starting a brand new police department was really intriguing to me because you get the opportunity to start off with a blank slate, right? And so we just wanted to try to build this police department in the 21st century mold so we can kind of make sure that we were on the cutting edge of technology and that we had the right strategies in place.
Okay. What would you think was some of those? I'm gonna go way back.
Okay.
I'm gonna go way back.
Okay.
I know about your family, when
Right.
you grew up, the business and everything that you're in. For our Southside Show guests, kind of tell them about where you came from and kind of how you got into, I was going to ask you the question, how do you feel about, I guess, investigating murders, but at the same time.
Okay, so in 1929, my grandfather started the first funeral home in my family.
Okay.
And so growing up around the funeral home, I always developed this interest in investigating murders. And so I used to sneak back into my family's business and try to, develop and hone my skills there. And so that's where I actually first developed the interest in actually wanting to investigate murders. And so as time went on, as I was coming up, my family began to open up one funeral home after another, and we have 4 in the state of Georgia, one in Albany, Georgia, Arlington, Oglethorpe, and then the one here in the Atlanta metropolitan area. And so being around that environment didn't frighten me at all, but it also sparked an interest in me, and that's how I wound up getting into law enforcement.
Now, did they want you to get into the family business?
They did. In fact, when I took the position in South Fulton, my father was a little upset because he's getting, a little up there in age. And so, but I'm still enjoying myself. And we're still in the process of building something really special here in South Fulton, and I want to make sure that we see that through. I'm going to eventually wind up back in the business, but for now, I want to make sure that we accomplish the goals that we've set for an agency.
Okay. This is always a funny story for me. At one time I'm not sure how you ended up in a boxing match, but you were telling me, tell us a little bit about that story, about what your...
And this is a funny story. When we were growing up, my father insisted that we participate in sports, right? And he gave us a choice. There was 2 choices. He said you could either box or you could play football. And so I decided, I was going to buck the trends with my other brothers, and I was going to box. Well, my dad took us over to the Warren Boys Club, and they put me in the ring with this kid, and that kid, the minute the bell rung, he hit me in the face twice. And I was standing there, and they asked me, they said, "What's your name?" I said, "Thursday." And it turns out that kid was Evander Holyfield. So I had no idea until later on that we were about the same age, and so that's a funny, and it's a true story.
Yeah, but I mean, I always get a laugh out of that. I said, if it wasn't for Evander Holyfield.
Holyfield, yeah, I would have never played. I would have never wound up playing football.
It seems like your dad, he wanted you to be in some kind of contact sport.
Right,
so.
he did, and that was the one thing that he always insisted, that we stay active as kids, because I had three brothers. There's four of us, and so we had to stay active when we were coming up. And,
were you the oldest or youngest?
I was next to the oldest. I was actually the middle child for a very long time. I'm 13 years older than my youngest brother.
Okay.
And so I was the middle child for a long time. So, the middle child is always the one competing for attention. That was one of the reasons I decided to buck the trend and go into boxing instead of playing football like everyone else. So.
Okay. So you were at the city of College Park. While I was there, you made some you had some tremendous accomplishments there. I've always, held you in the highest regard out of all the police chiefs I've worked with, in the state of Georgia. You by far are the top police chief that I've worked with. You're very down to earth. You're straight to the point. You say what you do what you say. I've been in some of your command meetings where you hold people accountable. There's no trying to, dodge, the responsibility that you guys have. And also kind of the morale that, your people have. Tell me a little bit about your management style and what you have, what is your management style as you move forward and growing, a department from scratch with the city of South Fulton?
The most important thing is that you come into an organization with a clear vision. And being able to sell that vision to your troops is extremely important, because we have a lot of young people. Millennials make up a bulk of my workforce, right?
Right.
And millennials want to be engaged with technology. They want to be engaged with, cutting edge strategies and things of that nature. So it's important that you develop your strategies and your vision tailored to their needs and tailored to their desires. Because I tell my command staff all the time, we have to get our job done for their reasons, right? And so in order to do that, you have to be prepared to invest in people. Not invest in processes, not invest in protocols and things of that nature. You have to invest in people. And when you start doing that, then you start to build the type of relationships with people that lend themselves towards success. And that's what we need to see. We need to make sure that we're building and leveraging relationships among our workforce and in the community as well. And so that becomes extremely important. And so when you have a relationship with your people, you manage differently. Right. And that doesn't mean that you're hanging out with them after hours and going to bars and things of that nature, that they feel like you care about them on a personal level as well as a professional level and their growth. And so one of the things that we've done is that we've started investing in a lot of training for our people. Most recently, we brought in an autism expert that developed a curriculum just for law enforcement. Oh. And we did that because we saw an encounter that one of our officers had with an autistic child that kind of made me a little uncomfortable, right?
Right.
And so being able to give our officers the tools to not only go into the community, but to navigate those sort of situations becomes extremely important. And so I could see the faces of our officers as they were going through that autism training, because many of them have family members that might have autism, and that touched them on a very personal level. And so doing that and making sure that you're educating them and furthering their professional careers is extremely important. And so that's really what I'm all about, investing in people and not necessarily processes. I have this saying, boss is boss and leaders lead. And I ask my command staff, which one are you? And so if you're a leader, then you have to have the right type of relationship with your people. Now, does that mean that I make the right decisions all the time? Absolutely not. Right. Occasionally we have challenges and we have issues with some personnel, and so the important thing is to try to navigate through those so that you're building and strengthening your workforce.
Okay, so tell me a little bit, the city of South Fulton 87, 88 square miles roughly, 108 to 110 population. How many officers do you have, administrative as well as, you know, on the street, you know, officers?
So here's what we found. We have 178 police officers now.
Okay.
We try to keep as few administrative officers in the office as we possibly can, because when I first came to the city of South Fulton, I was hearing horror stories about our response times. In cases, it was taking us 2 hours to respond.
Wow.
And so one of the things I did, I went to Georgia Tech, and I asked them to take a look at our beats. And we had 8 patrol beats in the city of South Fulton to cover almost 90 square miles. 8 patrol beats is not nearly enough. And so when I went back and looked at the beat design, the beats had not been redone since 1971. Now, most of South Fulton was farmland in 1971.
Yeah.
And so your patrol techniques during those times are much different. And so when Georgia Tech completed their study, they said we needed 18 beats as opposed to 8, which means you have to more than double the size of the number of police officers you're putting out on the street. So we surmised that we need somewhere in the neighborhood of 350 police officers. And so now what does that mean? Can we hire 350 police officers today? No, I think that's irresponsible. What you want to try to do is grow the police department organically, add beats as your manpower allows you to.
Right.
And we've gone from 8 to 12 now, and we want to continue to increase that number until we're up to that 350 allocation. And so it's rough right now because we know what number we should be at.
Right.
And so it's difficult in today's environment to hire that number of police officers because everybody is competing out of the same workforce, or out of the same job pool. And so it's important for us to try to distinguish ourselves, you know, as a city. And one way that we've done that recently is that, you know, we've cast that vision about, you know, 21st century policing and technology and where we're going. Then we've also built in incentives for police officers at other agencies that have certain training behind their professional careers, you know, like whether they're SWAT trained, whether they're traffic reconstruction specialists and things of that nature, so that we can bring those people in and not only compensate them for their certifications, but it also gives us the ability to plug in holes where we have deficiencies within our organization. And so I believe that that's an excellent recruiting tool for us, and it's a way for us to try to distinguish ourselves from other agencies, because we have this long list of certifications of people that we're actually looking for out in the workforce that exist already, and being able to bring those people in and compensate them at an appropriate salary is important.
Right, right. Well, it seems as though in your management style that you are able to, you really kind of hit the pulse of what your people need to grow.
Right.
And so as far as what is one major obstacle that you see, because I know that you guys are having growing pains. The city of South Fulton in general is having growing pains and being able to find adequate facilities for the operation. So not only are you trying to grow organically, but you're trying to grow organically probably in an uncomfortable environment because you don't have the facilities to be able to accommodate everyone. So what are, you know, that might be the obstacle, the major obstacle, but what are the major obstacles that you see in being able to have the type of department that you want to get to? What are those, what's the major obstacles?
In today's environment, and if you look at the 21st century policing model, the health and wellness of our police officers is the most important thing right now. And the reason that I say that is because we want to make sure that you're not only training our police officers, but you have to be concerned about their health and their wellness with everything that they're experiencing today. Before we started filming, I was talking to the staff here about the number of traffic fatalities that we have. And it's 34 traffic fatalities in the city of South Fulton so far this year. Well, if you could imagine, you know, police officers having to encounter that sort of those sort of tragedies every day, it could be a little taxing on a person's emotional state. And so we want to make sure that we're paying really close attention to their health and wellness, and we're looking at things like mindfulness, resiliency-based training for our people. I'm often reminded of a situation from when we were both in College Park together. I had to fire a police officer because he went to a domestic call, and he was in a really bad physical altercation with the husband. He was trying to get him handcuffed, and after he managed to get the handcuffs, the wife jumped on his back. And so he was still in the mind frame that he was fighting with a man. And when I looked at the body camera video, I said, I can't keep this guy. You know, and I wound up having to fire him. Well, I also realized that I should take that as a professional failure, because it's my job to give people the tools to navigate and be able to give them the ability to hit that reset button so that they'll know where they are emotionally when they're navigating those sort of circumstances. And so I reached out to the Mindfulness Institute here in Atlanta and asked if there's a way for us to go ahead and start trying to build a curriculum for law enforcement. And so I don't know that it exists anywhere in law enforcement throughout the country, but I started looking into it, and that's extremely important, making sure that we're paying close attention to the health and wellness of our officers. And the other things, the facilities and so forth, being a brand new city, yes, you realize the inventory is not necessarily there, and you do have challenges, you know, on that front, but the citizens of South Fulton have been extremely understanding when we've had to either close down facilities or we've had to move to other areas. And so I understand, you know, some the citizens' concerns, because they think that you're just moving out of their community to abandon them altogether. But when you talk about growing pains and the challenges that you're confronted with, I mean, those are all of the things that we have to navigate. Clearly, my preference would be to stay on Old National. Why? Because 59% of our crime happens along that corridor. And it's important that we have the appropriate footprint along that corridor at all times. And so, you know, we looked at other measures, other things that we could potentially do, and it pains me to close down the Old National Precinct, because I understood what that meant. The property values over there are skyrocketing right now, as you well know. Mm-hmm. And so it's everyone that's in business is in business to make money. Right. And accommodating a police department is really not at the top of everybody's list of things to do. And so we just want to make sure that we're responsible with the tax dollars and that we're doing the appropriate thing for us at that time.
Yeah. Well, I understand that you guys have recently just closed on, I believe, 9 acres of property for a new facility. How is that coming along so far?
You know, I'm extremely excited about that, Artie, and I'll tell you why, because it puts us right back in that Old National community. We purchased 9 acres of land right at 138 in Old National. I believe as we begin to develop it, that it'll be able to serve as a gateway to the city, because as you well know, right across the street is the Fayetteville line. Mm-hmm. And so we want to make sure that as people are coming into the city of South Fulton, that they know that that's that distinction. Right. So when they come in, we'll have a state-of-the-art police facility, and we don't want just any facility there. We've talked about it as a command staff. We want to make sure that we have a police department that's engaging with the community. We've talked about putting walking trails around the police department. We've talked about putting pocket parks around that 9 acres of land. We've talked about putting areas where people can come and do internet transactions, where we have cameras and so forth set up there, so that they can make those transactions safely and have some degree of comfort knowing that they're right at the police department and that those transactions are being videotaped. And so, because we've seen time after time where someone has ordered something on the internet, they've gone to meet the person in person, and then they wind up getting robbed as opposed to the transaction actually taking place. And so all of those things are important in terms of our community engagement. And so we really want our community to really embrace this facility. We want them to come and be part of it, not just to have a big standalone police department, so that it's like this unapproachable building, so to speak.
Will the community be able to have any feedback into kind of the design or anything?
Absolutely. We've reached out to the Center for Police Facilities. Okay. They're a company based out of Florida, and what they've done is they've helped do community surveys, facility designs, and things of that nature. They'll come in and do a needs assessment, space assessment for the police department to give us a state-of-the-art police department that won't just suit our needs today, but 20 to 30 years from now is what we're looking at. We've even gone to some facilities where most police departments are starting their own crime lab. And why that's important for us is because we collect our own ballistic evidence. Right now we have a partnership with ATF, and they test all of our ballistic evidence, but there's still a delay. And so it's important for us to be able to do those testings in real time so that we can immediately follow up on the results of those. And so we're looking and thinking about ways that we can, not only be on the cutting edge, but expanding our reach in the law enforcement community, because ultimately if we get a crime lab, then we're able to outsource those services to to smaller police departments. And so we want to send a signal that we're not a small player in law enforcement in the metropolitan area, that we're a major player, and we're prepared to reach out to other jurisdictions and municipalities to try to help further their efforts as well, because it's going to take a regional approach to crime fighting. Right now, everybody's talked about gangs, but those gangs don't know jurisdictional boundaries, and so they'll go from here to Fairburn, from Fairburn to East Point to College Park, and it's important that we're all sharing the same level of intelligence and information. Right.
Well, I can appreciate your forward-thinking mindset, and as you think about the mental health of your officers, physical health, having walking trails and things of that nature. What are other opportunities that you can see as far as being able to have a healthy law enforcement community relationship?
It's important for us to expand our community policing efforts. As our department grows, our desire is to have a community police officer in each one of the 7 districts. And let me tell you why that's important, because it gives them the opportunity to reach out to the constituents in many of these communities and start to document most of their concerns, so that we're working in cooperation with our city government. In other words, if there are some code enforcement issues that's impacting crime in a particular area, it's important for that community police officer to write up a plan of action for that particular community that allows us to be more efficient in our city government. In other words, how can the police department help support code enforcement? Or whether it's public works, with respects to the speeding signs. Everybody thinks that we put up those speed detection signs, but that's actually public works. And so it's important for us to be able to document those concerns and work closer with our city government to ensure that all of these things are taking place. And so that's our goal, is to have a community police officer in each one of the 7 districts. We're not quite there yet, but we're moving in that direction. And so that when we start getting these quality of life complaints, that we're able to address them immediately. Because what happens now, what's going on now, because initially I told you we needed 350 police officers, because we're only at 178, we have to make sure our primary focus has to be to reduce crime. Why? Because when we're able to do that, it helps you recruit more businesses here. And then when you get more high-end businesses coming into the city, then it helps us then to expand and probably, even to recruit faster.
Right.
And that's important, because the more police officers we're able to get in, top-level police officers, we don't want to just get a body for the sake of putting it in a uniform. We want to make sure we're getting the very best that exists out there. And so that we can start formulating those strategies and making sure that we're furthering the police department in that way. So we're not where we want to be in terms of addressing quality of life. We've had 3 straight years of crime reduction, but as our department grows, we expect to start delving into more quality of life issues, because one of the things our citizens said to us was that they didn't like the ATVs coming out. Well, we went out and purchased 2 ATVs. We sent our officers out to be trained on riding them. They ride the utility trails throughout the city sometimes when they're finding people out there riding them, and we've been pretty successful in our enforcement efforts to that regard. And that's one community policing initiative that we've been, one quality of life initiative that we've been able to implement. But we want to make sure that we continue to grow those sort of initiatives.
Yeah. Well, as you know, and you've known this since the Southside Show has been, I guess, since we've been, airing, is that the Southside Show is about identifying, magnifying the positive stuff that's going on the South Side, because a lot of the time your mainstream media, they don't cover those items. I've seen you on CNN and Channel 5, Channel 2, Channel 11, all the channels, and there's a lot of, like I said, from time to time, there's a lot of misinformation that's out there. And by the time that those statements are retracted or clarified, then, it's not on the front page. It's somewhere else.
Yeah, well, you're right.
Yeah. So if you would, kind of expound on some of the recent issues that you have experienced with the city of South Fulton, and just clarify for our Southside Show guests anything that you feel that might need any clarification.
So there was a bunch of rumors floating around about our narcotics unit and what they had been doing and the activities that they were engaged in. And I want our viewers to know that there was one individual that was operating outside of our protocols and our policies and procedures. Now, my biggest mistake was that I trusted this individual. Right. And unfortunately, sometimes when you're in leadership positions, you put people in those vital positions that you've had a relationship with. And this particular person I'd known for nearly 20 years. And some of the misinformation that's floating out there is that we were best friends, and they were best friends with my wife. Listen, I have a professional relationship with everybody. My wife is in policing, and my wife has a professional relationship with people at APD as well. And so when this individual came to the city of South Fulton, and she worked for me in College Park as well, she did good work, and she did it at a very high level. Unfortunately, she was operating outside of our policies and protocols. And so I tell my people all the time, no one is above the integrity of the organization. And so at the end of the day, she was held accountable. She resigned in lieu of termination. And right now, we've contacted the GBI to come in and investigate our assets forfeiture policies and our protocols and things that have taken place within that unit up until today. And we've given them all of the information that they've needed back to whatever time. And so when their investigation concludes, if it results in the appropriate charges being filed, then we'll work with the district attorney's office to ensure that happens. But, at this time, at no time would I ever be involved in any type of cover-up, because when I talk about the integrity of the organization, you have to do what you have to do to make sure that it remains at the highest level, because trust in any police department today is fragile. And when things like that happen, it's often viewed that it's the entire department. Well, that's not the case. And what I've told people is that I'm not going to allow one person to paint a broad brush across this entire organization because of their indiscretions. And so, we've worked closely to try to make sure we've rectified many of those problems, and we've tightened up many of our protocols as it relates to our assets and forfeiture unit. And so it's our hope that in time, this police department will begin to heal from that, and it will move on.
Yeah. Well, I feel in any organization, especially when you're starting something from the ground up and you're continuing to grow, there are always going to be those gaps.
Right.
And since you're always growing, you're experiencing new things. New means you haven't been there before.
Right.
It's lots of times you cannot, you have to put your trust in the others. If not, you would have a lot more gray hair. Well, you probably shave your hair, but you would probably have a lot more gray hair than you do. And you have to put trust in people. Sometimes that doesn't always work out, but there's opposition in all things. So I'm happy to hear that you identified that there was some discrepancies or some areas that need to be addressed, and you're addressing it accordingly.
Right.
That's all that you can do. And like I said, you have one of the best, like I said, if not the best operation that I have ever been a part of. And I'm proud to work with you and to have, just work with you professionally. In the past, whenever I had some big prospect that I wanted to bring to the community to possibly expand their business or to come, you were right there at the meetings to talk to them about what they may end up finding on the internet, about College Park at the time. And you put them at ease. And those businesses relocated to College Park, and they never looked back. They're doing well. And I look forward to doing the same thing with you, in the city of South Fulton also. There are probably people out there in our audience, our Southside Show guests, that are may be interested in possibly exploring a career in law enforcement, what recommendations would you have for them to be able to kind of continue their research and exploration into a job in law enforcement?
Always look at the vision for the department. Look at the vision and see where the department is headed. Look at their Facebook pages and things of that nature so that you can see the types of activity that they're engaged in. Look at the department to see if it's diverse, if they have programs for people like you inside of the organization to help them further their careers. Often people wind up at agencies without doing the appropriate research, and they find out that there's limited opportunities. And so what you need to do is find out, how advancement works for me as a person throughout any organization, and how can I get to the very top levels? Because why do something if you don't want to be at the very top level of it, right?
Right.
And so I want 350 police officers that want my job. Now, am I going to get 350 police officers? Well, absolutely not. Some people say, I don't want to be the chief, but you have to have some interest in the organization that maintains your enthusiasm, whether it's investigating murders, whether it's moving up through the ranks, whether it's doing different types of undercover investigations, whether it's working with children or whatever. What motivates you to do this job? And then I often tell people to write out a list of what it will take to get there over the next 5 to 10 years. And when you achieve that, what? Because when I achieved my ultimate goal of becoming the homicide commander in Atlanta, I was thinking to myself, what now? And then I started looking at the person above me, and I was like, I'm smarter than that guy. I could do his job. And then when I got there, and then so forth and so on until I ultimately became the chief. And so those are the sort of things when you sit down and you look at your career path that you have to strongly consider.
Okay, all right. Do you have any last words that you would like to leave with our Southside Show guest?
Listen, yes, absolutely. So when we talk about the City of South Fulton Police Department, there's a lot of information floating around out there on the internet. A lot of it's misinformation. I encourage people to get involved with your police department. The one thing that I tell my police officers is that police officers police differently when we have relationships in the community. Well, the same holds true for our citizens. When we have a relationship, we're able to better understand your needs and your desires as a police department. And so much of what you're seeing out there right now is misinformation, and if you get the opportunity to know your beat officers and your police chief, then it's much easier for you to understand or put away the misinformation that you're seeing out there on the internet and in the community. And so I would encourage everybody, when we have these town hall meetings about public safety, to get involved and get engaged with our processes.
All right. And how could our Southside Show guests get in contact with you? Do you have website information or Instagrams?
We have website. We have a website that you could go to the City of South Fulton GA.gov, and we also have an app. Now our app is the City Guard app, and then when you go to the City Guard app, you're able to select the City of South Fulton. And what the City Guard app does, it allows you to take pictures, upload video to us. It gives you vital information about the police department. And when you send tips to us, whether it's narcotics tips or tips about wanted persons, that information is instantly routed to the appropriate unit. And so I would encourage everyone to download that City Guard app and select the City of South Fulton, and you'll get all of the information that you need about your police department.
Okay. I didn't know that. I work for the City of South Fulton. I'm going to have to sign up.
All right.
All right. Well, thank you, Chief Keith Meadows. I appreciate you being a guest on the Southside Show again, and I really appreciate the great work that you and your people are doing.
Thank you
I
so
know
much.
that your work wouldn't be as great as it is without the people that work for you.
Absolutely.
So we do appreciate you, and I look forward to working with you in the future.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
All right, man.
All right.
And it's a wrap, folks. My time is up. I'm Artie Jones, your host of the Southside Show, bringing you the latest and the greatest that the Southside has to offer. And if you don't remember anything else from this episode, please remember this. Don't sleep on the Southside. Take care.